There is a very strange kind of pain that only people who have quit halfway truly understand. It is not loud. It does not make you scream. It simply sits there, quietly burning, like a whisper that repeats itself every time you begin something new, telling you that this time will be the same, that you have promised before, felt excited before, told yourself that this time would be different, and then nothing was different at all. You did not lose to anyone else. You only lost to yourself one more time. No one tells you this from the beginning, that the most painful feeling is not failure, but self-betrayal. When you look back at your own path and realize that you did not lack ability, you did not lack opportunity, and you did not even lack determination at the start. The only thing that always disappeared at the same point was consistency. You always begin strongly, with belief, with enthusiasm, but then one day arrives without any major incident. There is no dramatic failure, no one stops you. There is only a morning when you wake up feeling tired, and you allow yourself to rest for one day, just one day. Then one day pulls another, and before you realize it, something that once mattered deeply becomes something you avoid thinking about. The frightening part is that you get used to it. You get used to starting, used to the initial excitement, used to talking about plans, but you are not used to staying. Staying when no one is cheering, staying when results have not appeared, staying when emotions are no longer on your side. And slowly, a dangerous belief begins to form inside you. Perhaps I am not a consistent person. Perhaps I was born this way. Perhaps I am only good at starting, not at going the long distance. That belief does not come from one single time. It is built from dozens of times you stopped halfway. Each time you walk away, you do not just leave the work behind. You leave behind a piece of trust in yourself. And over time, you no longer believe that you can follow anything through to the end. There is a sentence that once deeply haunted me. Every time you break a promise to yourself, you teach yourself that your words are not trustworthy. And one day, even when you are truly serious, your mind will doubt you first. That is why so many people do not lack motivation. They watch videos, they read articles, they feel inspired, but they do not change. Not because they are lazy, but because deep inside they have lost faith that they are someone who can remain consistent. Consistency does not collapse in a single moment. It wears away, slowly, through the times you allow yourself to break even the smallest commitment. And each time, you tell yourself a very familiar sentence. It is okay, I will start again tomorrow. The problem is that you have said that sentence too many times. There are evenings when everything is quiet and you suddenly remember older versions of yourself, versions that promised to change, versions that mapped out a very clear path. And you realize they all share one thing in common. They did not lack dreams. They lacked the ability to stay with those dreams after emotions withdrew. No one prepares you for this, that there will be days when you feel nothing at all, no excitement, no fear, no motivation, just emptiness. And it is precisely on those days that consistency is truly tested. Many people think consistency is a feeling of certainty, strong belief, iron will. But if you wait for that feeling to continue, you will always quit at the same point on the road. Because emotion is not created to maintain commitment. It is created to react to circumstances. When circumstances are favorable, emotion supports you. When things become dull, emotion retreats. And if you live by emotion, you will only move forward when everything feels easy. There is a truth that is very difficult to accept, but it must be said clearly. Consistency does not make you feel good. It makes you feel normal. And because it does not create a high, your brain does not register it as a reward. The brain loves novelty. It loves quick wins. It loves recognition. Consistency gives you none of that. It gives you days that look exactly the same. Repeated actions, progress you cannot immediately see. So, if you do not understand the true nature of consistency, you will think you are doing something wrong when you feel bored, when you feel tired, when positive emotions disappear. You will think motivation has vanished, when in reality, you have just entered the only stage where real change can happen. This is the point where many people turn back. Not because they cannot continue, but because they do not realize this feeling is an inevitable part of the path. And when no one tells you that in advance, you believe you are the only one experiencing it. You are not alone in this feeling, but you will remain stuck if you continue to believe that you need emotion in order to continue. In the next part, we will go deeper into an important truth. Why people do not lack motivation, but lack a structure that keeps them staying when motivation disappears. And why misunderstanding willpower has caused so many people to misjudge themselves. There is a very common misunderstanding that must be dismantled from the beginning, otherwise you will keep blaming the wrong thing and fixing the wrong place. That misunderstanding is this: you think your problem is a lack of motivation. That if you had enough inspiration, enough willpower, enough fire, everything would be different. But look honestly at your own life. Have you ever had motivation? In fact, you have had plenty. You have stayed up late because of an idea. You have made confident promises. You have felt very clearly that this time you were truly serious. Motivation has never been what you lacked. What you lacked was a structure that could survive after motivation withdrew. Motivation is like a wave. It comes fast, strong, and it leaves just as quickly. But real change requires a steady current, quiet, stable, long-lasting. When you build your entire life on waves, you will always be dragged around by the unstable rhythm of emotion. There is something few people say directly. Willpower is not an unlimited resource. Every day, you make hundreds of decisions. Each decision consumes mental energy. And when you place all your expectations on willpower, you are placing a heavy burden on something that is very easy to drain. A thinker once said that people do not fail because they are weak, but because they place themselves in situations that demand too much mental strength over and over again. And at some point, anyone will collapse. Think about this carefully. Every time you tell yourself that you must try harder, force yourself, be stronger, you are using the same tool for every problem. But if the only tool you have is willpower, then everything in your life starts to look like a nail that must be hammered down. Consistency is not built on constant tension. It is built by reducing as much as possible the number of times you have to fight with yourself. Many people misunderstand consistent people. They see the results, but they do not see the structure. They think those people are always motivated, always certain, always strong. But the truth is often the opposite. The most consistent people are not those who defeat emotion every day. They are those who do not allow emotion to have the final say. There is a story like this. A man named Daniel runs every morning, not because he always wants to. In fact, there are many days when he does not want to leave his bed. But he has one very simple rule. His shoes are placed right next to the bed, and he is not allowed to think for more than 30 seconds after waking up. No arguing, no convincing, no bargaining. What keeps him consistent is not motivation, but the removal of space for hesitation. Meanwhile, many of us do the opposite. We let emotions speak first. We ask ourselves whether we feel like doing it. We wait for an internal signal, and when that signal does not appear, we conclude that today is not the right day. The problem is not that you are not strong enough. The problem is that you allow too many things to be negotiable. Consistency is not forcing yourself to do hard things. It is deciding in advance, in a clear state of mind, and then protecting that decision from the tired, lazy, doubtful versions of yourself that will appear later. There is a rough truth you need to accept. The version of you in the morning is not the same as the version of you at night. The version of you when excited is not the same as the version of you when exhausted. And if you allow every version to have equal voting power, your life will always follow the weakest version present at that moment. Consistent people understand this very well. They do not trust fleeting emotion. They trust decisions that were carefully made beforehand, and they design their lives so that doing the right thing becomes easier than doing the wrong thing. When you have no structure, every day becomes a battle, and no one can win forever. But when you have structure, many days pass without you needing to fight at all. This is why saying, "I will try harder," rarely works. It does not change the environment. It does not change the rules. It only adds more pressure to a system that is already fragile. In the next part, we will look at a very familiar type of person. Someone who always starts strong with intensity and determination, but then disappears quietly. Not because they are incapable, but because they fall into a very common psychological trap that few people recognize while they are still inside it. There is a type of person that feels very familiar. And if you are honest with yourself, there is a good chance you have been this person before. This person enters every journey with enormous energy, clear goals, burning intensity. They speak with conviction. They make others believe, and they themselves believe it too. But then, at some point, they disappear. No goodbye, no explanation. They are simply no longer there. No one sees them fail, because they leave before failure has the chance to appear. There is a story like this. A woman named Anna always started everything very strongly. When she decided to train, she signed up for a long-term program. When she wanted to learn a new skill, she bought courses, books, tools. In the first weeks, she was extremely serious. But then one day arrived. Nothing bad happened. There was no crisis. The excitement simply faded, and together with it, the entire journey slowed down, then stopped. What is interesting is that every time she quit, Anna did not think she was lazy. She thought perhaps the goal was not right, perhaps the timing was wrong, perhaps she was not ready yet. And so she went looking for another goal, another beginning, hoping that this time the feeling would last longer. The psychological trap here is very subtle. When you start very strongly, you unconsciously tie your identity to that initial feeling. You believe that your true self is the version full of energy, decisiveness, clarity. And when that feeling disappears, you do not think this is a normal phase. You think you are no longer yourself. And instead of staying, you leave in order to find again the familiar feeling of starting. There is a sentence I once heard that stayed with me for a long time. Many people are addicted to the feeling of beginning, not to the act of completing, because beginning gives you a beautiful version of yourself, while the process forces you to face your real limits. In the middle stage of any journey, there is no novelty, no praise, no recognition. There are only repeated actions and a quiet question. Is this worth it? And right there, many people choose to walk away. Not because they cannot handle effort, but because they cannot handle the feeling of becoming ordinary. No longer the special person who starts strong, but an ordinary person doing ordinary things every day. There is a hard truth that must be faced. If you cannot accept the stage where you look ordinary, you will never build anything lasting. Because everything that lasts is built in silence, when no one is watching, when even you cannot see your own progress. Many people quit here and comfort themselves by saying they will return when they feel more inspired. But they do not realize that leaving is exactly what makes returning later even harder. Each time you quit, the brain records a pattern. When things become uncomfortable, we retreat. And that pattern does not stay limited to one goal. It spreads to every area. Work, relationships, commitments to yourself. There is something very few people dare to admit. Sometimes we quit, not because something is too hard, but because it is too normal, not dramatic enough, not special enough, not impressive enough to talk about. But life is not built from moments worth telling stories about. It is built from days where there is nothing to say. Consistency, at its deepest level, is the ability to stay during the phase where there is no beautiful story. To stay when you do not feel like you are moving forward, but you know you are not turning back. If you always need a big reason to continue, you will only be able to continue short journeys. Because big reasons do not appear often enough to support a long life. In the next part, we will break a very familiar belief. The belief that consistency is an inborn trait. That some people are born this way and you are not. And we will look directly at a hard truth about emotional discipline that very few people are willing to face. There is a belief that quietly but powerfully controls how you see yourself. That consistency is something you are born with, that some people are naturally persistent, naturally tough, naturally unshakable, and you are not. And if you did not have it from the beginning, then trying is only a form of resistance against who you truly are. This belief is dangerous because it sounds reasonable. You look around and see people who seem to always go the distance. They work long term. They keep habits for years. They do not waver the way you do, and you conclude that there must be a fundamental difference between you and them. But look a little deeper. Consistent people are not immune to boredom. They do not have fewer emotions than you. They do not possess a secret source of strength. The only real difference is their relationship with emotion. There is a sentence I remember very clearly. Emotions are signals, not commands. But many of us have lived our entire lives as if every emotion were an order that must be obeyed. Tired, rest, bored, stop. Not excited anymore, quit. And when you do this long enough, you start to believe that you are someone who always gives up, when in reality, you are simply someone who is overly loyal to momentary emotion. Here is the rough truth. Consistency is not the ability to endure negative emotion. It is the ability to not let emotion decide your next action. You can still feel tired, you can still feel bored, you can still feel doubtful, but you do not give those states the steering wheel of your life. A coach once said that emotional discipline is doing the right thing without needing to feel good first. If you truly understand that sentence, it completely changes how you see yourself. Many people believe they need to resolve their emotions before they act, but in reality, many emotions only dissolve after you act. Waiting for emotion to change before continuing is a loop with no exit. Think about the days when you did not want to do anything, but you still did one very small thing, and afterward, you did not become excited. You simply felt a little less heavy. The emotion did not disappear, but it no longer filled the entire space. That is emotional discipline. Not forcing yourself to feel positive, but refusing to let heaviness decide whether you show up or not. There is a story like this. A man named Michael worked in a highly pressured environment. There were periods when he felt completely drained. Before, whenever he felt that way, he assumed he needed a long break to regain motivation, but that only made returning even harder. Later, he changed one very small thing. He made a rule for himself. No matter how he felt, he had to show up at a minimum level every day. Not to do well, not to do much, just to show up. There were days when he could only work for 10 minutes, but those 10 minutes kept the thread from breaking. And strangely, when the thread was still there, he no longer felt like he had quit. The pressure decreased, the guilt decreased, and continuing became lighter. Consistency is not built on days when you perform very well. It is built on days when you do very little but do not disappear. This is the point where the false belief collapses. Consistency is not a personality trait. It is a collection of very small decisions repeated even when there is no emotional reward attached. If you wait to become a different person before being consistent, you will wait a very long time. But if you accept that your current self can still act correctly in an imperfect state, you have already stepped onto a different path. In the final part, we will enter the deepest structure of consistency, not generic advice, but how very small, very ordinary things, when placed in the right order, can keep you staying on the path you chose, even during the emptiest phases. Consistency, when talked about too much, is often misunderstood as something grand, as if you must become steel cold, stronger than your current self, constantly overcoming yourself every single day. But the truth is the opposite. Sustainable consistency is not built from big acts of force, but from rearranging very small, very ordinary things so that you do not need to be heroic every day. The deepest structure of consistency begins with a question that very few people ever ask themselves. When emotion withdraws, what will remain in its place? If your answer is nothing, then quitting is only a matter of time. Many people place their entire commitment on a vague thought that they will try, that they will remember, that they will remind themselves. But when you are tired, the ability to remember and remind yourself is the first thing to disappear. Consistent people do not trust memory when emotion is low. They trust traces, very small traces left in daily life to pull them back, even when they do not want to return. Imagine a narrow path in a forest. It is not created because someone walked it forcefully once. It is created because people walk it enough times that the grass no longer has time to grow back. Consistency works the same way. It does not need exceptional days. It needs repeated days. The first step is to lower the threshold for showing up. Do not ask yourself how much you can do. Ask yourself at what level you can still show up, even on your worst days. That level must be low enough that you do not need in a debate. When you demand performance, the brain resists. When you only demand presence, the brain has far fewer reasons to fight back. The second step is to attach action to identity, not to results. When you say you exercise to lose weight, every day without visible results becomes a reason to quit. But when you say you are someone who does not skip training days, showing up becomes part of who you are, not a tool to reach a distant outcome. There is a sentence I deeply like: act like the person you want to become, even before you fully believe you are that person. Identity does not come from belief. It comes from evidence, and evidence is created through very small actions. The third step is to protect the chain. Not because a perfect streak has magical power, but because it gives you something extremely important, a reason not to disappear today. When you have shown up for 5 days in a row, skipping the 6th day is no longer about one day. It is about breaking something you just built. But one thing must be said clearly. Consistency does not mean never breaking. It means returning quickly. There will be days when you slip. The difference is whether you slip one step and stand back up, or slip and decide to lie there. There is an inner dialogue many people recognize. Reason says, just do a little. Emotion says, I am too tired, leave it for tomorrow. Consistency is not about silencing emotion. It is about not letting emotion have the final word. You do not need to hate your tiredness. You only need to refuse to let it decide your entire day. In the end, consistency is a very quiet form of self-respect. It is treating your own promises as something that carries weight. Not because someone is watching, but because you will have to live with the consequences if those promises continue to be broken. There will be days when you are not proud of what you did. But if you can say that you did not disappear, that you did not turn back, then that day is still building something very large, even if it looks ordinary. And perhaps at some point in the future, you will look back and realize that what changed your life was not one big decision, but the moment you stopped allowing yourself to leave when everything became normal.